All right, let's step into the unmapped, treacherous world of the Bronze Age, as seen through the lens of one of modern cinema's absolute most ambitious directors. Christopher Nolan's massive 2026 blockbuster adaptation of Homer's ancient epic poem, The Odyssey, is just a staggering cinematic achievement. It takes a near 3,000-year-old myth and transforms it into this visceral, non-linear thriller that completely rewrites the rules of the historical epic.
Okay, let's dive into this, because the internet has been completely buzzing ever since the credits rolled. The burning question right at the core of the film's mystery is, did Odysseus actually make it home? To answer that, we have to talk about the film's most debated mystery, that spinning brass astrolabe in the final frame. But before we can decode that haunting ending, we really need to understand exactly how Nolan rebuilt this mythical world from the ground up.
Section 1. A mythic roster. Building the Bronze Age cast. To ground this incredibly complex, mythopoetic story, Nolan assembled a powerhouse roster. We've got Matt Damon anchoring the film as the wily tactician Odysseus, Anne Hathaway as the resilient Queen Penelope, Tom Holland as their son Telemachus, and Zendaya as the goddess Athena. We also see Lupita Nyong'o taking on a really complex dual role as both Helen of Troy and Clytemnestra. But you know who one of the biggest standouts is? Robert Pattinson as the lead suitor, Antinos. He completely channels this sleazy, casino-style energy for his role, making the ancient villain feel incredibly modern and dangerous.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer physical commitment required to step into this world, particularly from Matt Damon. To embody the lean, battle-hardened Greek king, Damon dropped down to 167 pounds on a strict gluten-free diet. But the real kicker? He actually grew a full, wild beard for an entire year. No way was Nolan going to use artificial facial hair on set. He wanted to capture the true, rugged physicality of real hair. It's exactly that obsession with tactile realism that defines this entire production.
But hey, even with all that A-list star power and intense preparation, working on a Nolan set can be deeply intimidating. Just look at this highly relatable quote from Tom Holland regarding his first day filming. "I thought I was totally essing the bed." It's a hilarious and surprisingly honest admission. Holland was so incredibly anxious working under Nolan's notoriously demanding direction that he literally thought he was ruining his performance.
Section 2. The physicality of the world, 70mm and real-world scale.
Sir Nolan is famous for despising green screens, right? He favors huge real-world environments to capture the true struggle of a Bronze Age voyage. And this timeline perfectly outlines the grueling nature of the shoot. Day 1 kicked off in Greece at the stunning Voidakilia beach and the ancient Nestor's cave. By day 30, the crew is recreating the fortified city of Troy using earthen architecture in Morocco. By day 60, they were battling the elements to shoot complex sea sequences off Favignana Island in Italy. Across 6 different countries enduring harsh weather and massive logistical hurdles, principal photography incredibly wrapped up on day 91. That's 9 days ahead of schedule.
And they captured all of that real-world scale on a staggering amount of physical film. 2 million feet, to be exact. This explainer wouldn't be complete without highlighting that The Odyssey made history as the very first feature film shot entirely on 70mm IMAX film cameras.
But shooting an entire movie on IMAX presents a massive mechanical hurdle. IMAX cameras are notoriously deafeningly loud. So how do you shoot an intimate, emotional dialogue scene without the camera drowning out the actors? Well, Nolan's team custom-built huge, soundproof camera blimps to mute the mechanical noise. And because these blimps were so massive, they blocked the actors' sightlines. The crew had to rig elaborate mirror systems just so the actors could maintain eye contact. The sheer ingenuity required just to get a simple close-up is absolutely phenomenal.
Section 3. Forging a Bronze Age sound. Scoring without an orchestra.
Okay, so the visuals were deeply grounded in reality. But what about the audio? Nolan reunited with composer Ludwig Göransson to forge a completely unique Bronze Age sound, purposefully avoiding standard Hollywood conventions. Göransson hit the nail on the head when he simply stated, "It's not like the orchestra existed back then." That one quote brilliantly illustrates why they completely abandoned the traditional, sweeping strings of a typical sword and sandal epic. They wanted a soundscape that felt as ancient, harsh, and alien as the monsters Odysseus faces on his journey.
To achieve this, Göransson got incredibly creative. He purchased 35 distinct bronze gongs of various sizes and recorded them alongside modern synthesizers to create this eerie, pulsating atmosphere. They even worked with musicians to reconstruct ancient instruments like the aulos, a Greek wind instrument, and the lyre. Actually, Nolan specifically requested the lyre to be used as the musical sound of Odysseus plucking his deadly bow. It's a fascinating mix of reconstructed ancient history and modern electronic music.
Section 4. The price of ambition, real-world friction.
An undertaking of this sheer magnitude inevitably collides with real-world complexities. There's a really stark contrast here between artistic intent and geopolitical reality. From an artistic perspective, Nolan chose to film in Dakhla, in the Sahara, to achieve unmatched cinematic realism and landscape authenticity for his ancient world. However, this decision sparked significant real-world friction. Because the filming took place in the disputed territory of Western Sahara, the production faced accusations of colonialism from various international observers and media outlets. We aren't here to validate the outrage or defend the studio, but it is a clear example of how seeking aesthetic perfection can intersect heavily with complex global politics.
We see a similar cultural friction regarding the cast. The studio made the casting choice to hire Academy Award winner Lupita Nyong'o in the complex dual role of Helen of Troy and Clytemnestra. On the other side, there was significant online backlash from some corners of the internet, with vocal users arguing over the historical and mythological accuracy of casting a black woman in these ancient Greek roles. Again, impartially speaking, whether geopolitical or cultural, a film of this size and ambition naturally becomes a lightning rod for intense debate.
Let's move to Section 5 and see how this builds. Unraveling the astrolabe, the psychological climax. We are finally going to unravel the mystery of the brass astrolabe from our opening hook and decode Christopher Nolan's twist on this ancient text. So the absolutely crucial point here is understanding the difference between literal and internal realities in Nolan's script. Earlier in the film, we are introduced to literal time dilation. On islands like Aegea, time physically moves differently. A month at sea literally equals years back in Ithaca. But the ending shifts focus entirely away from these sci-fi mechanics. It becomes about psychological trauma. It's a fractured internal perception of time caused by severe, untreated PTSD.
In the final scene, Odysseus has successfully cleared the suitors and reunited with Penelope. The director confirms this is not a dream. The events in Ithaca are physically real, but the final shot lingers on the brass navigation astrolabe on his bedside table. The inner rings are spinning uncontrollably. This reveals the tragic twist. Odysseus physically made it home to Penelope, but his mind is still trapped in the chaotic, distorted rhythm of a 20-year war and a brutal voyage. He is home, but he can no longer experience civilian time normally.
Which brings us to the true tragedy of Nolan's masterpiece. The film takes an ancient story of heroism and forces us to ask this lingering, very modern question. If you physically survived the journey, but your mind is forever trapped at war, did you ever truly make it home? It's a haunting conclusion to a stunning film that beautifully visualizes the human cost of myth. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring.